Dear sir, could you please just give a brief explanation from where you are and what was your family background?
Yes, I am Gail Halvorsen, Colonel, retired, United States Air Force, and I'm from Western America in Utah, the state of Utah, about 60 miles south from Salt Lake City in the mountains. So my family, when I was a boy, were farmers, and I worked on the farm in sugar beets. The Germans developed sugar beets many years ago, and we had sugar beets on our farm. And I worked very hard with horses, cows, and grain, and all kinds of farm materials. It was a good way to live.
So I understand you had been a farmer's boy.
Yeah.
What made you fly an airplane?
I was a farmer's boy, and I worked in the ground and dust and all these things, and I'd look up in the sky, and an airplane would go through the sky. I'd say, I want to be up there. I want to be up there, not down on the ground. And so I had an opportunity to fly before America came in the war. In 1941, September, I had a pilot license, and I still have a pilot license. I'm still flying.
So how did you get involved? You haven't been part of the Second World War, if I'm right?
Yes, I was part in the Second World War. I received my license, my military training in 1943 and 1944, and I flew transport airplanes in South America, to Ascension Island, to Africa, and brought some airplanes to England for the invasion. So I was flying during the war, and I stayed in after the war, stayed in the military to fly transport airplanes.
So how did you get into the airlift?
I got into the airlift because Stalin tried to starve the West Berliners, of course. And I was flying from Mobile, Alabama, to South America. And our commander called and said, the Soviets have cut off food to Berlin. We must leave in 24 hours and go to Berlin, go to West Germany, in Rhine-Main and Frankfurt, and Wiesbaden, in Celle and Fosburg in the north of Germany, and fly food, supplies, coal, everything to the Berliners. And so I volunteered. I was not married, and my girlfriend was far away in Utah, not writing me good letters, so I said, I just as well be on the airlift. And a friend of mine was supposed to go. He had 2 children and a wife. And I said, I will go in your place. You stay home, and I'll go. He says, good, I want to stay with my children. So I volunteered, and that's how I came to Rhine-Main to fly the airlift.
But on that way, you lost your red Cadillac.
My Cadillac. Yes, I had a brand new car for the first time. My first new car. And after the war, and things were going very nicely, and I had to leave it there. I left it there under the trees in Mobile, took the keys, and went to Germany. I never saw the car again. I was here long. We were only supposed to be here 2 months, no more. 2 months to be fertig, almost finished. But it was longer, so someone in America said, I'd buy your car. And I said, okay. So I mailed them the keys. I never saw my new car again.
So where was the airlift based?
The airlift was based. The main base, the big base, was in Rhine-Main near Frankfurt. Another base for Americans was in Wiesbaden, nicht so weit von Rhine-Main. In the north are Celle and Fosburg. These were British bases, but they gave them to the Americans to have some of our airplanes north. The British had many airfields in the north and bases for seaplanes on the Elbe, and they fly seaplanes into the Havel into Berlin. with salt and gasoline, benzene, with Lancastrian airplanes at Gatow would bring in the fuel, and seaplanes would bring in salt to the city.
Did you remember your first flight?
I remember my first flight very well because I was just out of America, and where everything was good. The buildings were all painted, the buildings were all not destroyed. And I came over Berlin in the morning where I could see with no clouds. And I looked down, and it looked like the moon. Everything was just gone. You could look through the buildings, not at the buildings, because there were holes in all the buildings. You could see. And I just couldn't believe how 2 million people could live in all this destructed, all these buildings. To me, that first flight, the 2 million people below were faceless. I didn't know anybody. But when I got to know the Germans, they became individuals like me, the same kind of needs. They wanted freedom, they wanted flour, they wanted to be with family. And so they were the same. So the faceless 2 million became individuals finally, that I understood and could feel how they felt.
You became famous as a candy bomber. What was the idea to drop chocolates?
Well, it was because of gratitude. I dropped chocolate because of gratitude. Gratitude is very important in human relations. It depends on how people treat you and how you treat people. I met 30 children at the fence at Tempelhof, and they were between the bombed out buildings and the runway, and the fence was here. And in 1 hour, I spoke with them, and not one of 30 children put out their hand and says, "Give me more than flour, give me more than coal, give me chocolate." Not one did that. And they had no chocolate, they had no gum, but they would not be a beggar. They're so grateful for flour, to be free. And I said, wow. You know, they had a chance. The American, I've got candy gum and gum probably. And every other children in other countries would always say, give me, even though they had gum and candy, they said, give me more, give me American gum again. That's why I gave 2 sticks of gum, because they didn't ask. If they said, give me, I'd say, goodbye. But they were thankful. And when people are thankful, good things happen.
So that good thing was that you started making small parachutes, but
That's
still,
right.
from the 30 children to the parachute idea.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, when I took the 2 pieces of gum and passed them, broke them in half, so I had 4 pieces. And there were 30 children and 4 pieces. I thought there'd be a fight and bloody noses, but there was no fight. Those with the half a stick of gum carefully tore off the wrapper, stripes, and the tin foil, and passed it to the others. And when they got a piece of paper, the tin foil, put it up to their nose, and their eyes got big. Wow, I could smell. Just for the smell, they were happy. I said, I must give them gum too, and chocolate. So that's when I got the idea. I said, when I come land tomorrow and fly over your head to land, I can deliver it tomorrow to you if you will share it. Jawohl, we share it, they said. And so they wanted to know which airplane I was in. Different airplane every time, whatever plane was loaded. I didn't know, but I said, you can tell my airplane, I'd wiggle the wings, and then you'd know that's me. Watch just that airplane. And they said, good, that's wunderbar. And so that's how it started. I came back the next day and I put little parachutes, Taschentuch on for the Kaugummi and the Schokolade, so they could see it. And so it would hit them hard in the head, slow it down. And so I wiggled the wings, and boy, they waved their hands, and I pushed it on the airplane. And that's how it started.
I think it's very difficult to believe it was not a small aeroplane. It was an aeroplane loaded with hundreds of tons.
Well,
how can you wiggle the wings with such a heavy machine
Yeah, an airplane to fly, even with a heavy load, must be able to turn. So you start to turn this way and stop the turn and turn the other way. So the wings are all bolted on. They're not loose, wiggle wings. Wackelflugel is just a turn this way, and you top rudder and the opposite controls, and flip it the other way with the left rudder, and your nose stays straight, and your wings go like this. And when they saw that happen, they said, wow, get ready. And down came the parachutes, and they caught the parachutes. When they taxied out to take off along the fence, there were 3 handkerchiefs waving through the fence at all the airplanes. I said, I wish they wouldn't do that. And my co-pilot said, they know who you are? I said, no, because we didn't have permission. We could get in trouble, because that's not approved to drop things from airplanes without permission. I said, they don't know who we are. He said, keep it a secret. So he kept it a secret. But next week there were more kids, so he dropped it again 3 times. Then we got caught. The German newspaper man heard about it and took a picture of the airplane with my number and the parachutes. And that's when my colonel said, what are you doing? And I said, flying like that. So what else are you doing? And then I thought I would be put in jail. But General Tunner says, good idea. So I kept going. Then my buddies gave me their ration. And people in America gave us tons of candy to drop.
Did you drop only on the west or even on the east?
I got many letters from the children in Berlin. And I started to get a lot of letters from kids in East Berlin and East Germany. And they said, look, I hope you're not angry with us. I'm not angry with us because we're over in West Berlin catching the things that you mean for the Free Berlin children. Says, we can't help it where they put the border. They put us over with the Soviets. We like the Americans, and we like some of that. We don't have any candy and gum either. So they said, when you come over Tempelhof, you have to come over East Berlin to land. You have to come over East Berlin to land. And when you come over East Berlin, then drop it in East Berlin. Not many people over here, and that would be good for us. We'd have a better chance. So I came over East Berlin and dropped it. There was a big soccer game one day. The children had a big soccer game in East Berlin. And I flew right over the soccer field, dropped the parachutes, and the soccer ball went that way, and they chased the parachutes away from the ball. And then 2 weeks later, I came from Rhine-Main back to, not from Rhine-Main, from Tempelhof back to Rhine-Main. An officer met the airplane. He said, what are you doing over East Berlin? I said, I'm dropping parachutes to those nasty communist kids, and you can't do that. I said, the law of gravity is the same on both sides of the border. And they said, that's not the problem. The problem is the Soviets have complained to the American State Department. It's a dirty capitalist trick trying to influence the minds of the kids in East Germany against the Soviet regime. You have to stop. It's an international problem because the airspace where I was flying and dropping was under the control of the Soviets. So I had to stop. But I came back to Berlin and many times. And this was in about the 1970s or late 60s. Came back, and a young couple came up to me, a married couple. They said they had escaped. They had escaped from East Germany, and they had caught 30 parachutes. The wife, the woman, had caught 30 parachutes one day, 30. And she said, why did you stop dropping over East Berlin? And I said, it's politics, not people. I had to stop. But since that time, in 1998, we flew a Berlin airlift across the airplane, across the North Atlantic to Berlin and Great Britain and France and Luxembourg. But in Berlin, many East Germans, older East Germans, came through and told me about catching parachutes in East Berlin and asked about it. And they were praying for their aunts and uncles in West Berlin. The East Germans wanted the airlift to succeed. They had relatives in West Berlin. And so I met many East Germans who some had caught parachutes, and many East Germans who was grateful for what the British, French, and Americans did for West Berlin.